I made over $100,000 on the very first professional script I ever sold. If you can get to the end of this video, I will tell you how I did it and how you can too. I arrived in Hollywood after the premiere of my first big film, like the first film that I made, and I'd written the script for, so it was a writer-director project, and I'd been signed to a big agency in Hollywood. So I went out there, you know, having meetings with producers, with studios and so forth, because what typically happens if you're a new person in the industry or a new face, you do the rounds where you get introduced to the industry and you meet all of these different people. And I was a young guy, new, nobody had heard of me before, and I had a movie that was going through the festival, so it was one of these things. So I go there and I have these meetings, and then, you know, it's set up that this is what your next trajectory path is going to be. These are the scripts that you should write. So you tell your agent or your manager all your stories, these are the ideas you have, these are the treatments and so forth, and you strategize as to what you're going to put out. I'm saying this for if you have an agent. You don't need to for what I'm going to explain to you. So this is not absolutely necessary because you could do the strategizing yourself. And there's videos on my channel really explaining how to pick an idea, what kind of ideas work, the genres, the tips, and so many things. And if you're part of my community, the Screenwriters Workshop, the link is in the description. We go into all of this in depth, and you can ask me questions, and I can get you to a point where you can make the decisions yourself in terms of the right kinds of scripts to be writing that are most likely to get sold. I come to a decision of, okay, this is the script I'm going to write. I pick a subject, a genre, I pick an idea, and I go forward and I write this script. I thought this script was fantastic personally. Well, maybe not fantastic, but I thought it was good. Nobody else agreed with me, and it didn't get a great reception from the studios and the networks and the people that I'd sent it to. And I couldn't understand why. And I got all of these notes and things, and people were saying, you know, this wasn't working or that wasn't working. But from my perspective, I couldn't see why. And the reason for this lies in the path I'd taken to get to that point. So if you've watched my video where I explain how I became a screenwriter without going to film school, you should watch that video. It's on my channel. It tells you how I got to this point. And because I got to this point in this way, there were certain things that I just didn't know. I hadn't had the level of experience of repetition writing scripts. So I'd been in the industry for 10 years at this point, but I was a writer-director. I was trying to make films, so I would only write things in an effort to get things made. So I'd written 2 scripts that I'd actually turned into movies. I'd done 1 commission work, and everything else I'd done was with a view to making it into a movie. So I was never writing a screenplay, even thinking about the reader. That is huge. I never considered what the reader would think because the scripts were for me. I was an independent filmmaker and I was writing these scripts for me to make. So they were almost an instruction booklet, a notepad for myself. So it was almost secondary what an independent reader would think, or whether they would understand something I'd written or appreciate it or understand it the same way as it was for me. So because it wasn't important that they understood what I was getting to with my stories and my screenplays, I hadn't cultivated the skills necessary to write screenplays that would resonate with buyers. Even if I was in the right genre, I'd picked a great idea, I'd done all of these things, I hadn't developed those skills because I hadn't done that kind of work. So I was in a situation. Here I am with a big agency. I've been signed. I thought this is the beginning of my career. I'm going places. I write my first thing, try to sell it. It doesn't work out for me. So I'm sitting despondent. And I remember this. I'm in Beverly Hills in a guest room of one of my friends and feeling low. You know, I was like, oh my goodness, you know, what? I thought I had something here. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? I thought I was good. I thought I knew what was going on, all of these things. I had an epiphany, and the epiphany came from a very, very simple thing that I'd never done before. I started reading the screenplays of writers who were the hottest writers in Hollywood at that time. The people who were just selling like nobody's business at that time. And when I read their scripts, I was like, oh my goodness, I can do this. But I hadn't ever looked at screenplay structure that way before. In the space of reading a few scripts, I was able to see patterns and the ways in which screenplays were structured that was completely foreign to the way that I'd been doing it up to that point. Completely foreign. I can't even tell you the level of excitement that I had when I saw that. You see, this is the thing. There are some people that would process finding out they were wrong with arrogance and with anger. Some people process that they were wrong with denial because they cannot accept they were wrong. I'm a different kind of person, and this is the way that you should process being wrong. And it goes down to another video I made on my channel where I talked about reframing failure. And that is in the video where I talk about becoming a screenwriter and understanding the different steps that you need to take to become a screenwriter. So you should watch that video for sure, all the way through, because I utilized one of those skills of reframe. I said, I accept I failed. I failed to write something that could sell. But in that failure, I've gone away and I've looked at other people's work that has shown me why I failed. And I've now used that as a learning experience to correct my course. So that night, after I read the last of those scripts, it was 6 p.m. I sat down and I started writing a redraft from scratch of my script, and I didn't sleep till 5 a.m. the next morning. I wrote straight about 50 something pages of screenplay, if not 60 pages. I wrote almost the entire pilot. It was like a TV show pilot. I wrote the entire thing in one night. That was the level of excitement I had of I'd realized I was wrong, and it gave me so much adrenaline and so much energy that I didn't stop writing for almost 12 hours. Unbelievable. Now, this is the craziest part about it. That screenplay, which never happens, because I've told you about this before in terms of, in that video, I talked about being a screenwriter where pretty much 70% of your first draft doesn't make it into the final draft. This is the one time in my entire career up to this point where 70 to 80% of my first draft made it into the final draft of that script. That screenplay now, I looked at it and I said, oh my God, this is so different from what I'd done before. And it flowed so much better. I was able to look at that and put it next to my old script and understand all the mistakes that I'd made. Now, I took that script forward and sent it to my agent. My agent was blown away, was like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. This is so different. You've made such leaps and bounds. The next week, it was sent out to studios, and a month or two later, a major studio bought that script for over $100,000. In the grand scheme of screenwriters, obviously, you make more as you go through your career, but this was the beginning of my career as a professional. And I'd never had a paycheck like that in my life. I don't think you understand, for a struggling artist to get a paycheck with 6 digits, it's just a life-altering. I remember when I got the call and they said that they were gonna buy it. I didn't know how much they were buying it for. And I was just like, oh, great, I was celebrating. And then when I had a conversation with my lawyer, and then they told me what the offer was, I was like, huh? I thought I wasn't hearing correctly. Like, I was expecting 10K, 15K, 20K. When I saw the digits, the zeros on the paycheck, it blew my mind. Blew my mind. Because I'd enjoyed writing this so much, and I'd done it in one night. The idea of that one night's work had resulted in that was astronomical to me. But it wasn't one night's work. That's the point. There were 3 things and 3 advantages that I had at the point that I made the decision that I needed to go back to the drawing board, and I read those other scripts and I reframed my failure into experience. I had 10 years of experience, an agent who had a network and knew how to sell if they had material to sell, and a very, very solid idea in the correct genre that was doing well at that time. Those 3 things were essential, because once I then provided a piece of material that was of quality, those 3 factors played into the reason why it was able to sell so quickly. Because if you haven't picked the right script and you have a good agent who can sell and you have experience, it may not sell. If you don't have experience and you have an agent who can sell and you pick the right storyline and so forth, you might not be able to execute it. And if you have the first 2 things, and you don't have an agent who can sell things, you could still sell it, but it's very challenging. And I'm actually going to tell you about other ways, because you do not need to have an agent in order to sell your script. And that's the reason why I said what I said in the beginning, that it's not absolutely necessary. I was fortunate at this point that I had that. But there are ways you can sell scripts, because I've done it without agents before. I've done it. It's just a little bit more tedious. So keep watching, I'm going to explain. The first thing you have to do is assume you have a solid script. So I wanted to tell that story first, because you need to get to a point where your script, the actual material, is of a standard that it is buyable, that it is sellable. If you don't have that, a lot of the things I will say now don't really apply, because you don't have a product that is worth buying. So even if you can get yourself into the right positions, know the right people, do the right things, once people look at it, they're like, okay, look, cool, but what am I going to do with this? So you've got to take care of a few other factors first as well. So as I said, The spec script is very, very powerful. The spec script is when you write a script for free. What you want to do is make sure that you're picking the right genre. That is the most viable genre. And there are three genres that are just fantastic for selling that never go out of style: horror, action, and romance. There is a bit of romance in everything. So if you can have a love story or some kind of love theme within your screenplay, you're already doing very well. And it's very important to have that because it's such a human instinct, and it's an instinct that humans are drawn to. If you do it effectively, it's very easy to sell that kind of work. When you're dealing with action, it is so universally sellable because you don't necessarily need a lot of dialogue for people to appreciate and enjoy the film. So a good action movie with good set pieces, a good plot that is simple, easy to understand, and evokes levels of revenge or anger or retribution or defense or support or triumph, these sorts of stories, you can turn the volume off and play them and people can still watch them. If you watch Gladiator, you can still watch that movie without understanding the language. You can watch Die Hard without understanding the language. You can watch Predator without understanding the language, Terminator, T2, all of these films. So if you can do a good action film and you're skilled in that way and you can put something like that together that's good and unique and interesting, you're in a great position. And finally, horror is the granddaddy. I mean, if you're doing a horror movie, I mean, oh my goodness, that literally doesn't need dialogue. And that's what I mean by sellable. It's you want something that it's easy for producers and studios to market and to sell. And those genres are very easy to sell because a horror thing, it deals with a very human emotion, a very basic emotion of fear, terror. Everybody's afraid. All humans deal with fear every day. So if you can tap into that base instinct, dialogue and language is irrelevant. So a producer and a studio is really thinking about how many people can I sell this to? How wide is the market for this project? You can't get wider than the market for a horror film. It's not something I enjoy. I'm not a horror person. I don't really enjoy horror. I don't write horror, but I'm willing to tell you that that is one of the genres that is very powerful if you're looking for something to select for a spec. Now, once you've picked that, this puts you already in a very strong position to sell your script, which is what I'm saying. This is just a pathway for you to get that 100,000 check. Again, all of this I'm saying assumes you've got those skills, you've done the work to get yourself into a position that you're able to execute a good script. Now you've made the decision of what kind of script you're going to write. Make sure you've picked your idea adequately once you've picked the genre. Picking the right idea is critical for everything because I've picked the wrong idea many times and spent years writing things that I shouldn't have. And it's only through experience that I look back and I say, you know what, had I gone through the steps I should have gone to really vet and interrogate the idea I chose, I would have been in a much stronger position to sell the script that I wanted to sell. Once you've done this, now you have your screenplay and your spec script. I'm assuming now, this is if you have no agents, because I told you about the agent thing. But if you have no agent, try and get one. And the best agents or the good agents do not accept unsolicited material. So if you go to most of the agencies' websites, they don't even have a portal for you to submit a script. Your script has to be accompanied by, listen carefully, a producer. That's who you need to go for. If you have no agent, you have no representation, you're new to the game, and you've done the work to get yourself into a position that you have a script and you're trying to make money off that script, you're trying to sell it, you're trying to produce it or get it produced, find a producer. Now, producers do take unsolicited material. You just have to go and comb the internet, think about the genre of script you have, go and look at find the kinds of producers that are interested in those kinds of movies or make those kinds of movies. Some production houses do not take unsolicited material. Those are typically the bigger ones who want you to have an agent, and an agent would submit for you. It's a cat and mouse thing, and they do that to close off the ecosystem so that only the best people or the people who've been vetted are able to access them. Otherwise, they would have 100,000 scripts a day. What you need to do is to find the producers at a particular mid-level who are building their own resumes, building their own portfolios, and partner with them. And if they like you and they feel like they can make a film out of your project, or they feel they can sell your project, they will then introduce you to an agent that you would potentially get signed to based on the quality of that script you've written. And all three of you would combine to then get the script sold to a studio, sold to a network, or sold to another producer who is a buying producer that would partner with the producer you teamed up with in the first place. Rewind that if you need to, but that's how it sort of works, because I've done this a few times. What you can also do, and this is if you get really lucky, and this has happened to me as well, and it could happen to you, you could find a producer who's a buying producer. So there are people who've been given money by networks or by studios to develop. So it's development money they have. And they have enough money to acquire scripts to then develop them with a view to getting them made. This is kind of a risky position to be in, because once you allow a producer to essentially acquire your script, if it doesn't get made, they own it, and it's tied to them forever. You know, I mean, it's just, unless you did a deal whereby they have it for a window, which leads to something else I'll talk about in a second. But that is a good pathway if you're fortunate enough to find a producer that buys. But I would suggest strongly that you should be looking for a partner producer that would take you to get representation if you don't have representation, or if you already have representation, would help you get the screenplay sold. Now, the point I was going to make was, you can, and this is something I strongly advise if you want money from a producer, and it actually incentivizes them to do more work for you to get it sold or to get it made, is getting the screenplay you have optioned. Now, an option is where they pay a small amount of money to have exclusive rights to your script for a window of time. An option could be 6 months, could be 12 months, could be 18 months. Do not go over 18 months. Never, ever, 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 ever do that. I would suggest the most is a year, 12 months. You can do 18 months if you trust them. 12 months is a good benchmark to go on of an option of like, and the option is basically that, hey, we'll pay you 10 grand, 5 grand, whatever it is. We option, and our option could actually get pretty big. You can get options that are 50,000, 25,000, depending on the standard of producer you're dealing with. But typically it'll be nominal, a nominal amount of money, where you cannot take that script to anybody else. That producer has exclusive rights to shop that script with you. And they're trying to get the script purchased by a studio and made, where you can get paid and they will get paid. Now, the beauty of this is that because they've put money down, they are now incentivized to do work. When you get with a producer and they've not put any money on the table, it really is down to them how much work they're going to put in to getting your screenplay sold, you know, and getting your movie made. So that's the sort of position you're in. The benefit of that is that you're not tied to them. So if they go left, you can go to another producer, or maybe you find an agent and you can get it sold. There's no red tape. You can just walk away. You can also be shopping to multiple people at the same time if you've not signed an exclusivity option with a particular producer. I don't advise you doing that, because ethically, I don't think that that's a good thing to do, because you want to have a mutual level of integrity and trust with whoever you're partnering with, but you could do that as well. These are the ways you can get your screenplay sold. The other way is a long shot, and it's more a lottery. There are many funds and grants, and like there's the Blacklist. You might have heard of the Blacklist, where you can submit to this competition-like website, where if they select your script, they post it, and this is where a lot of agents and managers and producers go to look for scripts to purchase and acquire. You need to write something really good, or write something that they like. So let me not even say really good, it's all subjective. Write something that they like, that they would then put on the website. And to get to that point, you need to be pretty proficient as a writer by that point. And I'm assuming a lot of people who are coming to this video aren't professional writers, or they're not people who have a great amount of experience writing. So that system or that pathway is probably not the best for you. However, there have been people who write their very first script they ever written and get on the Blacklist and get it sold off the bat. It happens. But I'm talking to people who want a sustainable career. Most people who do that, they don't come back. Like they're not able to keep replicating that success. The actors that do that and are able to continue writing where they came from another vocation, they've already been in the film industry. They understand movies. So when you get people like Matt Damon or Ben Affleck who write Good Will Hunting and get an Oscar, not that the Oscar is the be-all and end-all of everything, but the point is they've had success as writers because they were already actors. So they're already in the ecosystem of movies. They understand how movies work. Similarly with actors who become directors and producers who become actors and so on. You can do a lot of these things. But for you and for the sake of your pathway as a new person coming to the game, I would strongly suggest the first options that I told you. Get a producer, partner with them, get an agent. If you can get an agent off the bat because you're just that lucky, do that. My pathway is not typical. People have done it my way, where you just go and get your movie made guerrilla, go to a film festival and you get signed there. That can happen. A lot of these film festivals are like markets. So there's the Toronto Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival, the Sundance Film Festival, the Tribeca Film Festival. These festivals have markets attached to them. The Cannes markets and the Toronto markets are really big. There are people who specifically just go there to buy things. If you can go there, finance yourself to go there, have your script, go to the parties, go to the bars, go to the premieres, go to the events, have your script ready, have it with you, print copies of it and so forth, and meet producers. That is a fantastic place to meet your potential collaborators who you could end up getting signed to. You can actually meet agents and managers at these events and get signed to them. But definitely it's a fantastic place to meet producers and potential producing partners, because there is nothing more important for a screenwriter than the partnership with either an established director or a producer. Those two things are golden for you as a writer. I mean, if you can get a director who is already getting work, you don't even need to have representation, because you have somebody that is going to grandfather you in and build your resume off them. That is the reason why I say going to do that kind of networking at events could be a shortcut for you to get all of these steps that I've outlined in this video together. Hopefully that all makes sense. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line. Like I said, the link is in the description. You can send me a message over there. I would be happy to answer it. You can also drop a comment as well. And yes, happy writing.